Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing great. This is a story about what if Luffy had Katakuri's powers. So I hope you enjoy. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video. Check out the author in the description, but anyways, let's start. A new nakama, Luffy grinned brightly at Zoro. Getting the swords was too easy. This excuse of a man had also been at the top of the marine base. Since the blonde had been the one who was to blame for Zoro's arrest, he should know where the sword of the green-haired one was. And Luffy had his stupid luck, like Law always called it again. He had borrowed the blonde as his guide to the other's room to fetch Zoro's swords. Luffy hadn't cared that he had accidentally knocked the excuse of a man out when he entered the room. It had made the straw-hatted boy cringe. It had looked like one of these no-bell rooms he had visited with Ji-chan. He had felt an urge to destroy it. But he hadn't come for that. The 3 swords he had taken with him had seemed all out of place. So 1 or 2 definitely belonged to Zoro. Perhaps the other would be more pleased to join them if Luffy offered the other swords as some sort of buffer. Then knocking the Marines over who seemed ready to shoot Zoro and Kobe was the easiest thing of the whole stunt. These guys weren't even close to the level of the ones which worked directly under Ji-chan. Maybe that's the reason why Ji-chan and his men were mostly in the Grand Line. So now Luffy was standing in front of the green-haired swordsman who just stared at him. The boy tilted his head a bit. Did he fetch the wrong swords, or was something wrong with the swords? There hadn't been any other swords, and the idiot had better not lie to him. They also didn't look damaged. But then Zoro started to grin. "They are all 3 mine," the swordsman said. "Okay. Don't know how you fight with 3, but here you go. So you join me, right?" Luffy looked at the other curiously while he waited for an answer. "Attack them. Give me my swords and you will see my answer." Luffy grinned. He liked this answer. The ropes were gone faster than he could look. But he was sure Zoro had cut them the sword. Luffy should hold too close to the mouth. Swordsman carried it in his mouth. So cool. He also blocked all the Marines at the same time. Yep, Ace and Law would agree that Zoro would be a great addition to the crew. "Fine, brat. I'll join you. But if you get in my way of reaching my goal, I'll cut you down." Luffy giggled while Kobe shrieked slightly and dodged behind him. "A goal? That means you have a dream. That's great. Does it fit with reaching the end of the Grand Line?" He looked curiously at Zoro. What could be this man's goal? Did the other smirk? It was a bit hard to tell with the sword in Zoro's mouth. "I'm going to be the world's best swordsman." Luffy grinned. That's a fitting dream for a member of a crew which will reach the top. "Now dodge, Zoro," he chirped cheerfully and jumped to attack. He used his hands to push him slightly higher from the swordsman's back to kick the Marine in the face. With each kick, he got a little higher and closer to the axe guy until he was able to punch him directly in the face, sending this one flying to the wall. Captain Morgan. The Marines seemed a bit lost without their captain. Or was that relief in some of their eyes? Well, Luffy could only grin about easy this had been. Stop right where you are, I'll shoot." The straw-hatted boy turned his head to see who had spoken. There was the blonde idiot holding a gun to Kobe's head. Luffy tilted his head. Hadn't he knocked the excuse of a man out? "Don't worry about me, Luffy-san. Just do whatever you had planned." Kobe's voice sounded a bit shaken. But there was something in his eyes that told Luffy the pink-haired one was serious. So Kobe had grown a bit of a backbone while he had been with them. "Okay," Luffy simply stated and took a little step towards the duo. He had noticed that the booze guy wanted to attack him, but Zoro seemed already prepared to take care of him. The blonde was shaken and threatening him again that he would shoot. This would be interesting. Luffy sidestepped so that Zoro could directly attack the Marine captain. A grin appeared on the black-haired boy's face. Now would be the perfect timing to do this. He had wanted to say it for a long time. "Nay, are you ready to bet your life on it?" This seemed to confuse the idiot. But also the whole body started to shake more. Did he scare the idiot with the question? "Luffy, don't be an idiot and ask people that question if you already can see that they are not ready," Ace scolded him. His big brother appeared with Law behind Kobe. His step-brother cousin didn't look very happy. "Hi, Ace." "Hi, Turao," Luffy just chirped happily and speeded over, knocking the blonde idiot, who had shrieked when he noticed Ace and Law, out in progress. Law groaned and flicked his forehead. Don't go against a whole marine base yourself, the surgeon scolded. Luffy pushed his lips slightly forward. But I wasn't by myself. I have Zoro with me. Zoro is really strong and he is our new Nakama, he said with a grin while he pointed at the swordsman who had beaten the corrupt marine captain and was coming towards them. Zoro, this is my big brother Ace and my step-brother cousin Tarao. Ace, Tarao, that's Zoro, he is our new Nakama, Luffy introduced them happily. It's Law. Call me Tarao and I will dissect you, Law threatened while Ace looked quite curiously. Roronoa Zoro, huh, so that's the pirate hunter demon we heard about, his big brother said. Luffy chuckled when he that Zoro only had lifted an eyebrow at the two older black-haired men. Well, if Luffy says he should join, it will probably be fine, Ace shrugged and grinned. But Law studied the green-haired one a bit skeptical. Before you join for real, one important question. Can you swim? The oldest of the three black-haired ones asked. Luffy laughed out loud about Zoro's surprised face. What did he only signed up for when he said he would join? His crewmates were an interesting bunch but they also seemed to attract chaos. Even when they were on the sea and no other except them around. He had already jumped into the ocean 10 times to fish out the youngest, Luffy. Zoro highly guessed that they had a rope around the boy before he joined because neither Law nor Ace could swim. The last crew member was a talking polar bear named Beppo who could swim but couldn't dive very well. Seriously, how did they intend to travel on when their future captain liked to jump in the water without being able to swim and also without being able to learn to swim? Something he only learned after some trips into the ocean. After the first 2 times, Luffy went overboard, Zoro had offered to teach the boy the basics of how to swim. So he would be able to stay over the water until they let a rope. Luffy had only stared at him confused before he stated that he wasn't able to learn how to swim. This was the point when Law explained that no one of the 3 black-haired crew members would be able to learn how to swim as they all had eaten a devil fruit. A fact that should be kept a secret until they are on the Grand Line and they only wanted to use in the East Blue against other devil fruit users. Zoro didn't really care about the explanation why they intend to handle it that way. Law seemed like a person who wouldn't do anything without a good reason and the most responsible one from the others. So he was going to trust the surgeon, who was at the moment the captain of the crew. That was also a detail that surprised Zoro a bit. The swordsman had guessed that Luffy would be the captain as both older one listened to the younger one when the swordsman was introduced as their new Nakama. There is a promise we have to fulfill it first before we go full force after what we really want. Then Luffy will be our captain official. Because then we will go after the One Piece. Hope that you are ready for that when the time comes. That was the explanation he got. The One Piece. That meant they would become pirates at one point. He didn't know when. But he got a feeling that with Luffy on board, it would be sooner as planned. Even if the 2 older ones seemed protective over the straw-hatted boy. Especially Ace. Luffy's older brother and first mate now and later had cornered him with some question that did confirm that the cowboy-hatted one had a brother complex. The black-haired had even threatened him that he would be burned alive if made one wrong move at Luffy, betrayed him, hurt him or just look at the boy wrong. Seriously, the complex was a bit annoying. But Zoro could see why. Luffy was easygoing, cheerful and slightly naive, even if Law had hinted that the boy also had a manipulative, devilish side. Something that sounded a bit unbelievable if Luffy hadn't tried to blackmail him into joining the crew. Ready for some medical questions? Law interrupted his thoughts. Zoro looked up. The black-haired one had some paper and a pen in his hand. Why do you need that? I mostly agreed to come with them because they will need someone who knows about medicine and can patch them up. So I'm in charge of everyone's health who will travel with us and also in charge of the medicine and suppressant, Law stated simply. Zoro sighed and nodded. Also now would be the best time as Ace had fallen asleep again. Luffy is napping with him and Beppo is focused on the map to plan our route. So there is quite a no comments from the others. So that was the main reason why this happened now. Well, there was nothing better to do. Maybe sleep or he could train. But better to do this now before the timing could be worse. Just ask already what you want to know. A grin ghosted over Law's face and the other sat down next to him. Out of the corner of his eyes, he could see how the surgeon wrote, Roronoa Zoro, at the top of the paper. Age, 19. First and second gender. Zoro looked at Law. The first part of the question had to be a joke. But no. The surgeon had a serious expression. Male. No second gender is known. He could hear the other side but didn't comment on it. Before you asked, I have no interest in this second gender topic. I just hope these 2 years get over quick and I stay a beta. It always sounded the easiest, Zoro added. He could see a smirk on Law's face. You're right there. It is the easiest. But you said it. You still have 2 years until it is final. In the 2 years, I want you to immediately inform me if you feel some changes. Changes that can't explain via training or wounds or medicine, the surgeon said. Zoro nodded. When you ask about the second gender, with the way Ace acts, is Luffy an Omega? I mean, Luffy doesn't act like an Omega, but with Ace's behavior. Law lifted his hand to stop him. No, Luffy is a beta. Well, he is now. Luffy became 17 a few days before we started our journey from Dawn Island. So there are still 4 years left until we know if that is final or not. But I can see why you are thinking that Luffy is an Omega. Ace does have serious brother complex. Pray that you never see his full brother complex. But since you mentioned Luffy being an Omega, would that be a problem if the captain presented as an Omega? Zoro opened his mouth to say that he didn't care about the second gender stuff again, but was interrupted when he heard Luffy scolding Ace for saying something to Beppo. His mouth hung open. He was sure that he had misheard the tone and words Luffy used. He couldn't really imagine that the straw-hatted boy scolded his big brother. The surgeon next to him groaned slightly before he turned his head. Oi, Ace, leave Beppo alone, Law shouted. What exactly is Beppo? You can't tell me you taught a polar bear to wear clothes, talk and navigate, right? Zoro said carefully. Law threw a paper ball in Ace's direction before he turned to him again. Beppo is a polar bear mink. Minks can be described as humanoids with animal features. It is rare to see one as they tend to stay on their island, which is located in the New World, the second part of the Grand Line. Wait, the bear is from the Grand Line. Don't call Beppo a bear. He has a name, Luffy, who suddenly appeared next to him, scolded him and poked his side. Zoro also felt a glare from Law's side. What exactly? Ignore it. Luffy and Law have some complexes if Beppo is involved, Ace said and hit his younger brother lightly. Okay, so Luffy and Law had a Beppo complex, Ace had a brother complex. Now, what kind of complex would Beppo have? That is for drawing on my face, the cowboy-hatted one told his little brother and looked angry at him. The freckles on Ace's seemed a bit darker than before. It looked like someone used a marker to paint them black. Turao, Ace is being a meanie again. I didn't draw on his face, Luffy whined. Out of the corner of his eyes, Zoro noted how Law had bent his head so his face was shadowed. Shut up both of you or I will throw the meat overboard. Not the meat. Both brothers looked shocked. So they both liked meat very much. People on a little boat sighted. Beppo's voice stopped whatever chaos was going on again and had all 4 of them at the railing to look. Luffy nearly jumped overboard again, if Ace hadn't held the boy back. The older one hugged the little one to stop the smaller probably from doing something stupid. The anger towards Luffy seemed forgotten in favor of keeping him safe. They don't look friendly. Do you think they would be more friendly if we party with them? Luffy suggested innocently. No, we won't party with them. The only thing they get is their asses kicked, Ace grumbled and laid his chin on Luffy's head. Zoro narrowed his eyes and saw a Jolly Roger. They belonged to the crew of a big shot in the East Blue if I remember right. The bounty was a bit over 10 million berry, the swordsman said. Trying to remember the few bounties which interested him because they meant he would be able to pay the repairments of his sword and food and so on. The idiots didn't look strong. So a fight could be a waste of time. A bounty around 10 million berry is low for someone who wants to survive the Grand Line, Law said. Well, if they attack, we shouldn't have any problems with them. I saw that the man lady has a bounty around 7 million berry and the fight against her didn't last a minute. So even if we met this captain we should be safe, Ace guessed with a yawn. A grin crept on Zoro's face. Looked like he made a good decision to with them. It would definitely be fun. Also, he would be able to grow stronger and met the man who he had to fight. If I remember right from the short look over the bounty in the East Blue. Don Krieg with 17 million and Arlong 20 million have the highest one of all wanted men who are known to be in the East Blue at the moment. The swordsman leant against the railing and watched with only mild interest how Luffy and Ace argued if they should fire the cannon. The three men on the other boat seemed to notice them now and seemed to want to attack them. A loud boom and the other ship was blown apart. "Hey, I wanted to beat them in a fist fight," Luffy pouted. Ace just patted his hair. "Next time. I bet they weren't even worse the time. Now they are swimming and, Luffy, look positive. Maybe some fish will come to eat them and then we can eat the fish," the first mate said. The bounties didn't seem too interested them really. Well, for some reason it didn't surprise him. Their topic was food now. Food seemed to be one of the most interesting topics for the two brothers. But Law seemed more interested. "Arlong. Don't tell me you mean Arlong the Saw, or also called Sawtooth Arlong. The man is worth more than 20 million berry. There has to be something fishy about him if the number is correct," the surgeon said while the brothers started to laugh. He said there is something fishy about a fishman. Law hit both of them on the head. Zoro must have had a slightly confused look on his face because the surgeon explained, "Fishmen normally live on the Grand Line. Well, to be more precise, in the Grand Line under the Red Line. They are quite strong. Much stronger than a normal human, and if you fight against one, make sure that you don't do it underwater. Because there they are nearly unbeatable without the right preparations." Now that sounded very interesting. Fighting with a fishman sounded like a really good training. The problem with Arlong is 20 million berry isn't much. If I remember right, he did belong to the Sun Pirates. A pirate crew which traveled on the Grand Line and which was quite famous for taking out entire marine ships on their own. The captain was a fishman named Fisher Tiger. His bounty had been 230 million berry. But he died around 10 years ago. The other one of the Sun Pirates and now Shichibukai is Jinbei. He has a frozen bounty from 250 million berry. In comparison to that, Arlong's bounty seems low. Too low if he was with them, and if my information is correct, he was one of the merciless fighters and even was in Impel Down for a short time, Law mumbled. Zoro knitted his brows. Why should they be worried about that? People could be on a strong crew without getting high bounties. He didn't see this firsthand, but he had heard friends talking about bounties. Arlong and his crew were a good example. Because there were no bounties known from his crew member. At least, as far as Zoro knew. "Do you know where Arlong exactly is?" Ace asked. Zoro could only shake his head. "No. I only found people with bounties randomly most of the time. I did learn the one who had high bounties so I could fight them to get better. I often only turned the people in when I needed money," he said as an explanation. "Don't worry, Tarao. I'm sure we will find out if you are worried," Luffy chirped. "I don't think you should say it in that voice. It only gives the feeling that this is really something to worry about," Law said, but the straw-hatted boy ignored the statement. Buggy the red-nosed Baka Ace glared at his precious baby brother. Why was Luffy so fixed on a musician to be their next crew member? A cook or a shipwright would be better as the next addition to the crew. They couldn't convince Law to cook all the time. Okay, maybe Luffy could, but he wasn't going to discuss this, and well, the rest of them didn't know how to cook, or it tasted bad if they tried. So a cook would be great. Also, the ship was bound to get damaged when they went to the Grand Line because of the weather and the stronger pirates. Small damages they would be able to repair, but it wouldn't stay that way. So they would need someone who was able to repair their still nameless ship. No, he wasn't going to follow his baby brother's suggestion to call the ship Shippy. That was a stupid name. Their ship needed a cool name. But that wasn't important at the moment. But pirates like to party. So we need a musician when we finally hoist the color, Luffy said and crossed his arms with a pout on his lips. Ace suppressed a groan and looked away. He would only say yes if he looked longer at his baby brother. The older one of the two brothers started to hate the fact that Luffy, despite showing off a simpleness and innocent most of the time, had developed a little manipulative devilish side during the time they traveled with their shitty grandpa. Because of this side, it was harder for him sometimes to tell his baby brother no. Especially, if Luffy used his brain. Listen, Luffy, we will get a musician, I swear. But you know that we can't convince Law to cook all the time, and neither you nor Zoro nor Beppo nor I are able to cook something eatable and healthy. Therefore we should look for a cook who can fight and maybe also is able to swim, So Zoro isn't the only one who has to jump into the water every time you decided it would be great idea to fall into the ocean, Ace said slowly and carefully thinking about his words, something he didn't very often. He glanced at his baby brother out of the corner of his eyes. There was a tilting of the head. Good. That meant Luffy was thinking about it. But before his baby brother could say something, Law appeared next to them. A vein was slightly popping on the surgeon's forehead. This was bad. You two seriously need to control your eating habits. We need to dock again because you have eaten everything except the stupid bread, Law said angrily. Luffy and Ace looked both with shocked faces at the surgeon. This had to be a joke. No meat, they said in unison, and that got them a hit from Law. Their stepbrother could say what he wanted. He definitely learned their grandpa's fist of love. Otherwise, it wouldn't hurt like it did. Do we still have booze? Ace heard Zoro asking. For some reason, he felt that this was a bad timing to ask that question. He found himself right when he could see how Law's face seemed to have become darker. Oh shit, that wasn't good. He needed a good distraction quickly. An angry Law was something they didn't need. Ace picked up his baby brother. If Luffy pulled the right face, they could save their lives. Come on, Law, Luffy needs food. He still is shorter and thinner than us, and you know how tall Shitty Gramps is. Luffy is so small compared to him. We need to feed Luffy so he is able to grow big and strong, Ace said, hoping that this would convince Law to take pity on them and stop looking like he wanted to cut them apart any longer. Luffy blinked innocently like he didn't understand what exactly was going on. Good. This expression of his baby brother would poke Law's weird Omega Mother complex. Well, that was the ideal plan. Land sighted. Beepo's shout made them all look up to the crow's nest. Then the realization seemed to dawn on the crew members. They quickly went towards the railing. Ace still carried Luffy, just in case that Law was still angry. I also see a big ship on the shore, the polar bear mink said. Do you see the flag? A Jolly Roger with a big red point on the skull in the area where a nose should be. That's the same Jolly Roger the three men had on their ship, Zoro said, and had his hand already on one of his swords. We will dock elsewhere and then look around the town for supplies. But we stay together in case of a fight breaking out. Beppo, you will stay on the ship to protect it, Law ordered. The voice lacked any anger. Looked like the island saved from the surgeon's anger. Aye, Beppo shouted and climbed down from the crow's nest to take control of the ship's helmet. Nay, Law, when a fight breaks out, are we allowed to use it? Ace asked with a grin. Law sighed and looked at them. Only if it is needed. Now that sounded like they would get some fun. Law swore to himself that he would look for a necklace with sea stone and a rope to make sure that Luffy wouldn't be able to run off anymore. Seriously, the boy had too much unused energy. Maybe, he should allow the little one to use his devil fruit powers in their room on their ship. But it was possible that it was too cramped. Even if Luffy was very small in his smallest form. He sighed. They had to hurry and get on the Grand Line. Sure, their opponents were stronger than in the East Blue, but devil fruit users wouldn't attract that much attention as here where people thought devil fruits were a myth. But now was not the time to think about it. Ace, Zoro and Law had to search for Luffy, who had run off shortly after they had docked. Law cursed the speed the straw-hatted boy possessed. How was it even possible for Luffy to be that fast without using Soru? Yes, he knew that Luffy didn't use it. Otherwise, the boy would be a lot faster than he already was. So the surgeon walked the short way on the shore to the town with Ace and Zoro. When the town came slowly into view, he was surprised that there was no typical sound was heard. It was too quiet for a town. There wasn't a single person on the street when they entered the town. The houses seemed fine except some of them which were completely destroyed by something he couldn't conclude, yet. But Law had a strong suspicion that the pirate ship in the harbor had something to do with the destroyed parts and the dead town. Is that normal for a town that dead? Ace suddenly asked and pointed to what seemed to be the middle of the city where a big circus tent stood on top of a building. If Law concentrated on his hearing sense, he could hear music coming from there. So the town wasn't as dead as it seemed. For a ghost town like this, it isn't normal. But let's just find Luffy and grab some supplies so we can leave, Law said and closed his eyes to focus. It would be easier and faster to find Luffy that way. It didn't take him long to notice the presence of the boy. But there was another one. Weaker, a lot weaker than Luffy's, and an animal-like presence close by the boy. But they didn't feel dangerous. Law opened his eyes and turned the way he felt the presences. They better hurried and find Luffy before trouble would find them. That way, Law said and took the lead. How can you be so sure? Zoro asked. Haki. Don't worry, we will explain later. Just not now, Law explained. He was sure that Ace had a grin on his face. So the slightly smaller black-haired one seemed to be happy already about the possibility to teach their crew members about Haki. Poor Zoro, the only way Ace knew to teach Haki was Garp's way of teaching them Haki. Law took a side glance at the green-haired swordsman. Just from the look, he would guess that the other was interested in Haki. Well, it would fit, as Zoro seemed to do and try a lot of different ways to become stronger without using dirty tricks. With the help of his Kanbunshoku Haki, they found Luffy quite quickly. The boy was in front of a destroyed pet shop if the shield close by was anything to go with. Next to Luffy was a white dog who was fed by an older man with glasses and armor chest plates. Both the man and the dog looked wounded. Luffy, you idiot. Don't just run off on your own. Ace scolded his baby brother and bonked him lightly on the head. Law narrowed his eyes and studied Luffy carefully. The boy didn't react like he usually would. He didn't call Ace a meanie or said that Ace was stingy. Nay, Ace, Zoro, Law. Okay, now the surgeon was worried. It was rare for Luffy to call him by his name. He only did it when he had one of his serious moments. Can we kick these pirates out of town so that the people can return and to avenge the destruction of Chaochu's treasure? The straw hat shadowed Luffy's eyes. But now Law knew just from the voice the younger one used that it was one of these rare serious moments of Luffy again. Boy, you don't have to do that. This group is dangerous. You already did enough by saving Chow Chow and me, the man said, clearly worried. Why wasn't he surprised that Luffy would fight to avenge the treasure of a dog? The kid really loved animals too much. The dog had stood up and barked. Looked like it wanted to fight, too. No, you should rest, Chow Chow. Don't worry, Tarao, Ace and Zoro are with me. So we will beat them. I'm just sorry that there was nothing we could rescue from your treasure except the pack of dog food, Luffy said and caressed the dog's head, before his little step-brother cousin stood up. Law felt himself nodding. He knew that Luffy wouldn't leave the town now without fighting the group. That wasn't Luffy's way to just go away if someone's treasure wasn't treated the way it should be. They are in this circus tent in the middle, aren't they? Ace asked with a devilish grin. Looked like the older version of their future captain needed to blow off some steam, too. You can't fight against Buggy. He has a devil fruit. They are real. I saw him stabbing a person in the back with his hand when he stood meters away. Huh, so we are allowed to use it, too. That would only be fair to return the favor if he decided to use it against us, Ace said and Law heard Luffy cracking his knuckles. Don't worry about us. Just make sure that you are somewhere safe outside the town. Just in case something happens we couldn't predict. Also, if it is fine with you, after the fight, we would like to stock up our supplies. Help is appreciated later, Law said and waved his hand as he followed Luffy who had already decided which way. The group of four came to stop in front of the building with the circus tent on top. Luffy could hear loud circus music. Great, I should have known. Only a circus-themed crew would use a red nose on their Jolly Roger, Law grumbled. Come on, Law, it won't be a kid's show if we entered. So you don't have to worry about getting a cake in your face, Ace teased. Luffy blended their bickering out and looked up. To go the direct way to attack them sounded good. But his plan was stopped when a pirate came out of the building. The man grumbled something. He stopped when he saw them. Tell your captain that he should leave the town otherwise we will kick his ass out, Luffy said cracking his knuckles. To prepare himself but also to look intimidating. He saw Ace and Sabo doing that when they were younger. The man just stared at them for a minute or two before he burst out into laughter. You guys beating Captain Buggy. The pirate nearly choked on his laughter, but he became quieter when he saw Zoro. So Zoro's bounty hunter reputation seemed to be scary enough to make this person take them a bit more seriously. But still not enough. Ace, light it up, Luffy commanded. See, it is done, his big brother said. He felt how Ace stepped next to him and made a gun with his fingers. His big brother shot a little fire bullet that flew right beside the pirate's ear, who shrieked in shock of the sudden heat, into the building. A loud sound was heard and the building started to tremble. "Looks like I hit a bullseye without even trying," Ace said with a grin on his face. "Who and where is the punk who did that?" A clown appeared on the rooftop. He wore a captain hat and a captain coat. But he didn't feel like a captain in Luffy's opinion. "Oi, tell your captain to get out of town, big red-nosed idiot," Luffy said with crossed arms. "Who are you calling a big red-nosed idiot, brat? I'm the great Captain Buggy," the clown shouted. Luffy tilted his head. The facial expression and the anger reminded him a bit of Dayton when Ace, Sabo and Luffy had made chaos again. "If you are the captain, then come down and fight us, red-nosed idiot," Ace said. Looked like his big brother was annoyed with the clown. Law didn't look much happier. More like he was seconds away from taking the clown's heart to make him suffer just for being a clown. "I'll handle them, Captain Buggy," a new voice said, and a man on a unicycle jumped down from the rooftop. A sword pointed towards him. But the slash was intercepted by Zoro. "Don't just waste our time," the swordsman said and turned his right hand a bit to make the acrobat back away. "Pirate Hunter Rorinar Zoro. Are you here to take our captain's bounty?" "I'm here because my captain decided to kick you out of town." "I don't care about the red-nosed idiot's bounty," Zoro growled with his third sword in his mouth. "Can you handle him alone, Zoro?" Luffy asked. A nod was the only answer he got. But it was the only one he needed. "Yosh, Ace, Tarao, that red-nosed idiot is mine. Don't get involved," the straw-hatted boy said while he tapped his foot lightly on the ground. His eyes were fixed on the other captain. Too fast for the others, Luffy made up his way and landed a kick directly in the clown's face. He supported his body with his hands on the edge of the rooftop before he pushed himself slightly so that he landed on his feet on the rooftop. "Captain Buggy. Why are we always dealing with people who scream their captain's name when their captain is hit by someone?" Ace asked when he appeared next to him. Probably making sure that no one of the crew members on the rooftop would interfere with the fight between Luffy and the red-nosed idiot. Law was mostly doing the same in front of the building for Zoro. "I don't care about their behavior. I just want to kick them out of town," Luffy said and watched how the clown got up again. "I'll show you, brat, that you shouldn't mess with great Captain Buggy," the clown shouted, and then his body split into two halves. The upper half was flying towards Luffy and Ace. The boy just dodged it while his big brother toyed with the clown. "You know, you are not the only with devil fruit abilities," Ace said, clearly amused when flames were dancing on his body where wounds should be. This seemed to shock the clown. So the other had never thought that there would be other devil fruit users. Well, good for them. Luffy used the shocking moment to kick the clown where it hurts. A loud screech reached his ears. So even if their opponent split his body, he was still able to feel what happened to the other body parts. Sweet. Luffy grabbed one foot, threw the shoe away and started to tickle the clown. The red-nosed idiot started to laugh. "You know that's not the normal way to fight, Luffy," Ace said and dodged a slash from a crew member. "But he isn't a normal opponent. So it's fine when he leaves the town with his crew." Luffy shrugged and continued to tickle the foot of the clown. The straw-hatted boy was surprised to suddenly see how Ace stopped moving and a sword went through his big brother. "We could play baseball with him if he splits enough," the older black-haired one suggested. "Baseball. Yeah, that sounds good," Luffy cheered before pulled on the foot in his hand. "Oi, big red-nosed idiot. Spilt more so we can play baseball with you." Law was annoyed. Most of the crew members weren't worthy of a fight. But there were many of them. It got really annoying. Especially, since the acrobat, who introduced himself as Buggy's first mate Kabaji, lacked any pride. The man wasn't fighting an honorable fight, which would be normal between two swordsmen who were proud to call themselves that. The idiot had ordered his men to attack them to leave openings in their defense for him. This was some coward tactic. This strategy may work with weaker people. But it wouldn't work on Zoro and him. Law felt a grin ghosting over his face. They wouldn't be fast enough to hit them. Not if he used hockey and played a bit with his devil fruit. When he had noticed this strategy, the surgeon had asked Zoro to trust him. A room around them was all he needed. Every opponent became a toy as soon as he entered. Law could cut them apart or open and switch them around as much as he liked and as long as he could. But the surgeon was careful to leave the acrobat out. Zoro had said that he would be fine to fight against Buggy's first mate one-on-one. It bothered Law a bit that he used his devil fruit ability. They had wanted to use them as less as possible and now he was using it nearly to his limits. But he really wanted to make sure that no one interfered with Zoro's fight. Get him, Richie. A new voice could be heard and he saw a big lion jumping towards Zoro and him. Shambles, the surgeon mumbled and switched him and Zoro with 2 little stones to avoid a direct confrontation with the beast. Nice trick. But I, Beast Tamer Moji, will defeat you because Kabaji clearly isn't able to do that, a man with white hair said. Law frowned. Moji was on the lion's head. This would be an opponent more suited for Ace or Luffy who both like to fight big animals and would try to eat them after they won his idiotic granduncle would do the same. But before another attack could be launched someone screamed and a short man flew over their heads far away. Oi, catch, Luffy shouted from above and threw a bag at the man called Moji. Your captain split apart enough that we could play baseball with him. In the bag are the missing body parts. But I would say that you better start searching for him before your captain falls into the water, Ace said with an evil grin on his lips. Captain Buggy. The whole enemy crew shouted and started to run towards their ship. Probably trying to get their captain as fast as possible. Luffy and Ace jumped down from the building. Both had a slight grin on their face. But Luffy's didn't look very happy. Luffy. Nothing, I had just hoped that I could hit the lion with the bag hard enough to knock him out. Because he was the one who destroyed Chaochu's treasure, Luffy mumbled. Law sighed. The little one could be a strange one when someone's treasure or dream was involved. Ace flipped the straw hat from Luffy's head and ruffled the black hair. You did what you said. You made the bad pirates go away. So everything is going to be fine, Luffy, the Logia user said. Ace is right. The people can return and can try to repair their houses and also Chaochu's treasure, Law added. Zoro also nodded in agreement even if the green-haired swordsman looked a bit unhappy how his fight went. You brats really made them leave. The mayor suddenly appeared with more people behind him and Chow Chow. The white dog jumped Luffy and licked the boy's face. You don't need to thank me, I couldn't do much for your treasure, the straw-hatted boy mumbled and patted the dog's head. Oi, kid, you 4 did enough and Chow Chow and I would most likely be dead if you haven't come along. The mayor said and the people behind him thanked them loudly. Law felt himself grin. He was sure that he heard the youngest one whine, I don't want to be a hero. Something he could only chuckle about. Teach me the basics about hockey, Zoro said and looked at Law. Ace had fallen asleep again in the crow's nest. Luffy and Beppo were playing with Chow Chow. The dogs seemed to have taken a liking in their future captain and had followed them. He had also jumped the boy. After a conversation with the mayor, Chow Chow had become some kind of a member of their crew. Well, more a mascot. Also, the dog slept in Luffy's hammock because the boy liked to cuddle. Law looked up from Luffy's, Beppo's and Chaochu's jumping around to him with a lifted eyebrow. You used this hockey thing in the fight against the crew members and I don't mean this blue sphere and the things that happen inside it, Zoro said and sat down next to the surgeon who sighed. Normally, I would wait with explaining it, but, well, it will be helpful if you at least know the hockey types at first. There are 3 different kinds of hockey. 2 are able to achieve with training. The training is different for each type to perfect it. The 3rd version of hockey is something you were born with. Otherwise, you can't unlock it. The one I used is the Kanbunshoku hockey or simple observation hockey. It is helpful to predict your opponent's attack and also to find people. That's the reason I was able to find Luffy rather quickly, Law explained. Zoro nodded to show understood this form of hockey. It sounded useful, especially the way this blue sphere seemed to work. The other one, which everyone is able to learn, is Busoshoku hockey or armament hockey. It can be used as an armor around chosen parts, for example arms and hands. Some people are also able to coat their whole body with hockey. It can also be used on swords and other weapons. The most notable thing about this hockey is also the possibility to hurt Logia users. It can be used in a defense way but also in an offense way. I guess on the next island when there aren't many people close by you could spare with Luffy to see the defense options of this hockey in action, Law said. Why are you trying to keep low? Just from the power level, I would say that at least you and Ace would have taken out Buggy's crew alone. Well, you did, as Luffy was only dealing with Buggy and I was mostly fighting against this idiot on the unicycle, Zoro said. Because we promised to stay off the radar of some people. Also, it helps the crew member we pick up to grow stronger a bit before they are confronted with the real trouble, which we will find on the Grand Line, the surgeon simply stated and stood up. Zoro nodded. He said he was going to be the strongest swordsman in the world. So learning Haki would help him on his way. His eyes were on Law, who went over to Luffy and Beppo. Law, Ace and Luffy were strong fighters as far as he could judge it. Beppo was quite quick, too. But Zoro hadn't seen him in a spare yet. So he wasn't able to say something about Beppo's strength. Also, he had a feeling that he hadn't seen everything the three others could do with their devil fruits or Haki. But the swordsman had noticed how all four got each other's back if it was needed. They might be a little annoying sometimes. But they were his crew members now. So he should also work hard to be strong enough to have their backs like they had his. Thanks for watching the video and like the video for another part. Goodbye.